It might be a result of everybody just collectively deciding that Atomy is just a good enough deck and nobody really challenging it.
It's mob mentality.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of mob mentality. I'm not sure because, you know, on one sense I kind of agree with Envy where like, oh wow, this really looks kind of weird, but people keep playing it. So here it is, Vetu.
I'm sorry, I had a fit of sneezing there when I went off camera, but yes, that I think it might just be a mob mentality thing. I honestly don't know. I mean, I don't play in tournaments. I only cast them with extreme expertise, clearly. But you know. All right, Mofu.
You know, as enemy mains ourselves.
You see what I see, Mofu?
I think so.
That's what I check for. This is what I check
dragon.
for every single game. You know what I'm checking for, Mofu? I don't know if I'm checking for it.
Yeah, that Rowan's face has not been grayed out. He's actually alive.
Rowan's face is not grayed out. A dragon deck is available to play. And I do believe Vetu is the one that's in the winner bracket. I can't actually look at the bracket at the moment, but I think he was in our winner's bracket. So he chose to not ban dragon.
I think it was Vetu that we were just watching ascending up the losers bracket, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, was it losers finals? Okay, right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so interesting of him. Either way, interesting of him not to ban dragon. Why do you think he might have done that?
It's kind of like as we said before. I guess there's just like a mentality to approaching PDK where a player really genuinely believes they've brought something that deals with it just fine against all the variants we see it have. It's just such a strong deck, as we've already observed. But if Vetu, who has gotten this far with such creative lists, has that confidence, I'm willing to hold my breath and say, maybe he has this one. We'll see how it pays off.
I would agree. You know, I would honestly suffice to say that his neutral control forest probably has a pretty okay matchup against PDK. You know, if there existed a good matchup against PDK, I would think that control neutral forest would be the answer for it. It's interesting, actually, we haven't actually seen this card relevant. Be relevant. But what do you think of him including Tina in this list?
Tina, that really just opens up the question of me of what is that aiming to hit? It's
right, yeah. There's not many neutrals being we're not in Alice meta anymore. There's not many neutrals being played. And honestly, I mean, PDK doesn't play any. If you're not going to ban PDK against this, then realistically, what is that aiming to hit? Yeah, that's my question also. I thought you'd have the answer.
Right, I'm thinking usually when someone plays a strange tech card like that doesn't seem to have an immediately applicable situation, it's probably because he's trying to find something in a bad matchup that it just smashes through. But exactly 5 damage has me puzzled as well.
And that is gonna have the same effect on me. Petrification in the Hand of Fantasy. I think I pointed it out like probably 5 hours ago that he had this card when we watched him in round 1. I think we watched him in round 1 losers. The first thing we casted, he opts to go for the Mutagenic Bolt instead, but he did have Petrification as well. It is open deckless. He's not exactly hiding the information.
He has turns Beauty and the Beast into a beast without its beauty. Now Tina.
A beast without its beauty. What do you mean? That rat's adorable. What do you mean, Mofu?
Oh, he didn't evolve it. It has the most adorable evolve. If you wanna try to call it cute. Really, it's when he puts his clothes back on.
What do you mean if you want to try and call it cute? Mofu, what?
I don't know. I think the frogs in the game are cute, but the mice and the other, I don't know.
Mofu, I think you need to recheck that flame rat. I think flame rat's adorable.
All right. We're seeing his Tina, perhaps in the use that all he's really gonna get out of it this game is just as a follower for tempo. But not
right.
in a particular.
That was kind of awkward for him. Ooh, Bahamut drawn for Vetu. Honestly, if Vetu can live, I think he's fine. Like realistically, he's got Lucifer even this turn, so
he has a game plan that I'm used to. Oh.
That elf twins just shook the screen. Okay.
That didn't occur to me that elf twins was about to do 8 damage. That was like a one-sided revelation. Ooh, and Tina coming in for value actually.
Very interesting. I mean, Hector could have done the exact same thing, but you know.
Perhaps. I do
always want to evolve Tina. She's cooler. And I mean, all of a sudden, you know, we see Vetu in a position where He's got Fantasy on the back end. Fantasy's playing a deck that needs to try and find the damage for this, and I don't think he can, realistically. I mean, he's going to have a board this turn, but that board's not going to do too well against this Israfil.
Yep. And after that Israfil, he has an answer in Petrification, but then what does he do against the onslaught of value between Lucifer, Bahamut, the rest of it?
Right, V2's deck, we've already mentioned before, has that breaking point of once it's at 10 play points, it's kind of hard to do anything against him because he kind of just goes Super Saiyan at 10 play points. He's doing something that Forest decks normally don't do. He's kind of emulating, he's cosplaying Dragon, right?
Mm-hmm. You thought you banned Dragon, but joke's on you. Every single one of my decks is in fact Dragon, but I'm noticing the most brutal thing about how this matchup's played out so far is that V2 had a very strong Beauty and the Beast on curve. Fantasy answered it just fine, and still V2 is at this perfectly fine to be aggressive, just front foot, winning the game style kind of advantage, despite that.
And that's a beautiful Bahamut, pops even his own staircase, so this is just amazing.
Ooh. This could be a dancer though.
This could be a mutagenic bolt. And it was. Okay, so that answers the Bahamut. Probably literally the best card he could have drawn was Oz, and he got it, so that's pretty good.
Though, only small points of damage at a time, and this Flame Rat either sets up a Grimnir or Vetu simply plays another Bahamut, in which case Fantasy's gonna need to pull another one out of his hat. But I think he only plays 2 mutagenic bolts, if I did check that correctly.
Right, he does, yeah. Very common double mutagenic bolt. So now Oz has to find an answer to the second Bahamut, and he's drawing less cards this time with her, so... But he does have Petrification, he does have a Dance of Death, so... And he didn't! That's... it's not quite game yet! Actually, no, Grimnir does make it game. Yeah, Grimnir makes this game. Wow.
I'm really speechless. V2's Control Force has just excelled today. It has beaten all kinds of matchups. It's proven not only to be effective against some of the stronger lists that we've been seeing people playing, but it's also versatile. It can handle anything, it feels like.
It really does feel like he brought this deck into the tournament with a great mindset of what he expected to run into, right? It feels like V2 had sort of a heads up. It feels like V2 downloaded the information for the tournament. He knew the VODs before the tournament and just knew that he had to play this deck because this deck feels almost perfect. I agree. It feels like it's tackling the tournament perfectly.
Deck feels like it was built to assassinate every single other person that he's faced. But
right,
that being its last fanfare for now, if he gets this win, we'll get to see it again. Now he has to just make it to the end of this using D-Shift.
And D-Shift against Burn Rune. I don't know. I'm not feeling it. How do you feel this one?
While I also am not too confident for him, I think I understand now why V2 left Dragon Open. I think V2 already understood that as part of his Keikaku, which means plan, he didn't
which
want
means
to
plan,
face,
by the way.
Translators note. Fantasy as aggro sword, which is just the end of V2 if he has to try to beat that with D-Shift. And so he'd rather even just throw in the odds of dealing with this heavy storm-oriented, space styled Round Dragon Keeper deck from Fantasy, just in order to have a slightly better edge to win here. But we've seen some amazing plays come out from V2. We've seen some impossible victories, or seemingly impossible victories, come out of him playing this deck. I think this is a very comfortable playstyle, or a deck with a comfortable playstyle for him, and he could still go far even in that adversity.
I do agree with all the things you just said. I think it's working great for him. And also to explain the mulligan he chose there, he didn't get rid of Insight Kaleidoscopic Glow. Magic Missile, I think, was the last one. And even then didn't cast Insight turn 1, and that's mostly because your hand could have gotten worse than those 3 cards, and you don't want to cast Insight turn 1 when you're not boosting anything relevant. So for those of you out there learning to play D-Shift, and you wanted to know why he didn't do anything, or kept what could have been a bad hand, it's because that hand could have been much worse. So
part of the survival guide.
That is Envy Bear's Declassified Runecraft Survival Guide. He doesn't go for a magic missile. Ugh. Looks like he's gonna Fate's Hand instead. I think.
I think this Fate's Hand is quite fantastic. They Owl really pushes it through though. Perhaps Levi would have been more useful in this exact scenario.
Well, I mean, honestly, I don't think you care if you fireball the 4-3. Mostly, when you fireball the 4-3, it's gonna get hit. You know, like realistically, that 4-4 Owl is just a target for something else, like Mutagenic Bolt. So.
Right. Fantasy pass back to the initiative, develops a bit of burn, and shrugs off a little damage. Vetu is getting there with his mini chimeras. Still no D-shift in hand, though.
Right, I think really what will tell in this match is the fact that Vetu has yet to find D-shift in 15 cards. That's not good.
Right. If he finds one later, he's probably going to need to pull out another magic trick like before, where he was able to barely get a D-shift just to playable range, but really, there's a certain point in this list where you've played out your spells, you've used your cycle to find D-shift, and not having one by then just hurts. Now, does he go for a Chimera here? He simply throws out a Wind Blast.
He could have saved a bit more face doing that, but I guess he disagrees with the play. He's going to go for getting hit in the face by Levi and probably an evolved Carl even. Carl could be, the evolve could be saved for Levi if a second one is drawn. But it looks like he's going to go for it, so Chimera can clear both of these. We'll see if that ends up happening.
Something that makes me the tiniest bit nervous is...
D-shift, okay.
That takes
and
away
immediately Sword Caches it. Okay, I like it.
Right. Takes away a bit of the pressure on him if he never sees a D-shift to play out the rest of his hand into a Mutagenic Bolt. He can safely hold on to things now.
He finds a second Sword Cache with that 0 play point Fate's Hand, and all of a sudden, he's got an 11 play point D-shift. He's boosted this down 7 times in one turn. He can play the Chimera to get rid of the board, and he probably doesn't want to flood too hard because, like you said just now, Mutagenic Bolt is an option for fantasy, but I'm liking V2's chances now. Like he had the Sword Cache, he threw into another one, and I think he's fine, honestly. As long as nothing else too big gets drawn.
So let's count up the burn damage. The Dance of Death is an additional to the sorcery. Always goes face in the case of Fantasy's game plan here.
Ooh, he goes for Professor Taboos instead of Master Mage Levi. That is very interesting.
I suppose Master Mage Levi always accounts for the same amount of damage, assuming he doesn't want to throw it onto a board. So he just gets the largest board that he can manage with his current resources. This could force out the other Chimera. Don't think that is particularly bothersome to V2, however.
I imagine that it will, and even that Angelic Snipe, he doesn't have to evolve anything. He's getting pretty close to just being able to kill him now.
Second D-shift, handful of spells. Merlin, if he can somehow figure out a way to make this Merlin a part of his first D-shift turn, I think that is one of the cleanest ways to find a kill here.
Could just go for Snipe Chimera onto the Professor Taboos. Doesn't quite boost D-shift hard enough though, so he might go for evolve this and then also snipe this instead to get that one extra boost. Okay.
Reviving the trade is a very impressive feat of the Clay Golem here as well. A lot
that does provide a Dance of Death target. It does provide a rat target. You can ratify that, so. Very interesting sequencing here by Fantasy. I guess he's hoping to draw into Halo Golem or something. I'm not sure.
He has access to so much burn, yet the fact that all of it costs just about 5 or higher means throwing it out all in the same turn is just not something that's going to realistically happen. Now, is Vetu going to take this opportunity? I think he has a huge opening here.
He's gonna go for a tempo shift. He can't quite cast the second one, and he can swing for a solid 13 here. This does set himself up for a mutagenic bolt, though. So,
right, if he even so much as commits a ward here, there are no sources of storm in Fantasy's list, I don't believe, so I don't think that he's necessary. I don't think he has to.
this is actually really, really bad. Hopefully, Vetu
Fantasy
doesn't
plays
summon his
mutagenic
golem.
bolt.
Not now.
Okay, so mutagenic bolt's
Holds
not castable because if Fantasy would die first.
I'm through.
Oh, never mind. He just surrenders. So Dance of Death on the 7/7 wasn't good enough because he was out of evolves, and because he would die to bolt first, he actually can't do that. So
V2 takes a first win, and Dimensional Shift has been working out really well for him so far. The Burn Rune deck is quite interesting, and we actually talked about it a little bit. I can't remember if it was particularly Fantasy, but I remember us making note right at the start of the day how the Burn Rune deck looked a little more control-y, slightly more mid-range rather than the aggressive variant of it.
Yeah, with taboos, yeah, even taboos, Calamitous Curse. It doesn't have as much burn, it seems. I can't remember off the top of my head what they would cut instead of that, but Carl, I think, makes that deck work, honestly. It really does.
But going back to the whole idea of, I think in both games, really, it did seem like it didn't quite have enough of an aggressive punch to close out the game in both scenarios against a Forcecraft deck and against a Dimensional Shift deck. Wofu, do you have any experience with kind of Dirt Rune in any way, shape, or form? What do you think are the options that may be alternatives here for Fantasy?
I think that one of the biggest faults of Dirt Rune when it comes to that matchup is that it can be quite reliant on some of the stickier followers, or Magic Illusionist namely, to get a lot of damage early so that their late game burn can be enough against D-Shift, and even then, that's not very reliable due to the existence of Kaleidoscopic Glow. I think that's actually not a perfect matchup for Dirt Rune at all. They have a way to win, but it requires a lot of things to go right. But I'd be interested to see it happen again.
Certainly off the top of my head, it seems like the lack of Piercing Rune was a very, very big one for at least in Wonderland Dreams. And just the strategy that Fantasy approaches, you know, opting not to get maximum amounts of Crimson Sorcery, which could have changed that match, right? If there was 3 more damage on the board, then the Rats would have killed first for Fantasy. So we'll have to see if the approach might be a little bit different here on Fantasy side, but we have the bracket reset, so now everything is all even. We're going once again into the fray, and Vetu lets Dragon through again. It's very intentional on his part. And the mulligans are out, and it seems like not too much in the hands of Fantasy here.
Vetu has the hand, man. As a D-Shift player, this is kind of what you want to see. If he gets into Dimensional Shift soon enough, this is the hand. He's got the hand.jpg.
It's got the win condition already, the Giant Chimera, which itself could single-handedly make up for the absence of a lot of other things.
Not to mention, Fantasy's hand is like shaping up to be the opposite of that. Fantasy's hand has got double Oz in it, so.
That's at the point where he had to throw out a Red Hot Ritual against nothing. He sees no target for this, so he just would like to cycle it out, or have it on board and not in his hand for the Oz to draw some more options.
I'm just a mage who's as old as dirt.
Levi even just coming down. Fantasy trying desperately to claw some kind of aggression onto this board. He wants to attack, but Vetu's not going to let him. He's going to bounce Levi again, probably. Could also go for a Magic Missile Angelic Snipe on it. He's going to Wind Blast him. Oh, never mind. Rip Levi.
I suppose V2, now having played the matchup once, doesn't really feel he's afraid of any of the larger followers the Fantasy plays, which makes sense, as one of Fantasy's decisions he's made in building this deck is trying to get tempo swings with Professor of Taboos, but this is not the kind of matchup where that matters.
He can bounce this 0/2 ward, or even anything, into Dimensional Shift. This is the best Owl turn you could hope for. And he didn't do it. Feels bad, man. But he can still go for Owl. It's still a great boost. He might opt not to do it. He might Magic Missile instead to just keep digging. Merlin next turn is pretty good. It can attack the ward if you keep it alive. So that's pretty great.
think he's contemplating that if he Merlins and it finds a D-shift, then he wouldn't want to miss that magic owl boost on it.
Right. That is true. Looks like he's going to disagree with that. He's not going to dig. He's going to just boost the Chimera.
Done for.
Realistically, he probably won't attack this. He might, but he might not. It's not really much that matters in attacking this. Okay, might as well, right?
If Fantasy tries to develop some followers later, then this could save him a little bit of a headache if he wants to try to hit something with Merlin.
You're done for.
This is going to be really unfortunate for Fantasy. He has access to now 1 play point spells rather, but this is definitely going to die and banish the 2 spells he has in hand.
Mm-hmm.
This is your fate.
Though I usually find these variants as Fantasy's sort of burn, sort of mid-range, sort of control-ish,
It won't be long
at
now.
least reactive, dirt rune lists can be pretty consistent. They can find a lot of really nice answers to a lot of situations, but there's also
Death is another
these such
fiction.
scenarios where its hand just doesn't develop anything for the longest time.
Honestly, both players having that scenario as Vetu goes for a full Merlin Evolve and doesn't find Dimensional Shift. He's now completely on the hope I get this Chimera big enough plan.
It's just like back in the old days.
Assuming Fantasy never gets to develop many zombies off of the taboos, though, I don't think there's many bodies that actually contest the damage that Chimera could deal later.
That is very true. Fantasy flooding the board completely, hoping to go for an Oz next turn. Sword Crash drawn. Kind of a live draw. It can hit the Chimera and make it even bigger, but and it is actually gonna do that. Okay. A few different ways he can kill this Levine. Goes for a Wind Blast. He can also Angelic Snipe Face to continue the aggressive spell boosting of this giant Chimera. Chooses to hold it instead.
I am a fiction.
Oz can find things, but if she finds spells, you actually don't want her to find spells here. Okay, that's actually much better than her finding a handful of spells. Because she can't do anything to this board, you kind of wanted to find burn instead of spells.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm starting to wonder. I don't really see what it would take for Fantasy to be able to put himself back into this game. Even though he's drawing now continuously through these wizardesses of Oz, he's not really finding anything that's putting up enough pressure per turn or able to stick against what V2 has anymore. So I think this
Right.
is looking very grim for him.
This Chimera's been in hand the whole game, so it's roughly at 14 damage. Now at 15, so this is a pretty big Chimera. It's gonna probably just close the game. 16 damage. Once it's castable, I think it just OTKs.
Mm-hmm. So Fantasy's probably going to play out some bodies. A Levi, another Oz, something. I mean, I don't imagine Fantasy's playing these out knowing that V2 would have a giant Chimera. He's probably just imagining V2's going to D-shift him soon. But as he continues to do this, V2 continues to be able to clear them. He can be patient if he'd like with this D-shift he's now drawn.
I don't think he has to. As one more spell, I think one more spell right there. I think that just put Chimera at 20 damage even. And on top of that, V2 was able to amass a massive board as well. So this is 100% over for V2.
I think that
The game
Magic
just ends next
Illusionist...
turn.
Right. I think my man Magic Illusionist could have done something about this game had he appeared about, 15 cards earlier. I think he was
Probably
a
about
pivotal
8
part of
turns
this.
ago. Yeah, if he'd been a bit more useful.
Come gather round.
Yeah, turn 1 Magic Illusionist even. Just started with him on the
Right,
board
yeah.
actually. It's probably what it takes to come back from that kind of a top 15, I would say. Unfortunate, didn't work out for Fantasy. So after this, he's going to have to deal with V2's control force in the best way he can.
Impressive. Looks like you are.
Oh, he actually had a 24 damage Chimera. I was off by, it seems, 4. It was 4 bigger than I thought. Rip.
Did he ever get the chance to cash it?
Oh, he
Oh, I
did
guess the
cash it.
owl.
That's right. I didn't count
The
the,
owl
cash.
also hit it.
You're right. He cashed it. My bad. Either way, I mean, I always love Giant Chimera Lethals. I love that card so much. So fun to play. But that's
Such a
kinda what
satisfying
D-Shift
animation.
does. It is. It is such a satisfying. It's just like shotgun blast.
It's
Bam.
like the end of
OTK.
Space Jam, that like across the court slam dunk kind of thing.
Yes. Yes. Giant Chimera is in fact Michael Jordan. Yes.
Yeah, just spell boosting the length of the arm.
Just
No.
slam dunking your dreams away from you.
I believe we actually saw this matchup happen earlier in a way that didn't spell good fortune for Fantasy again, and that we saw
Ooh.
V2 play Beauty and the Beast. It got answered on the spot, and then V2 had absolutely no trouble dealing with the matchup afterwards. The same thing could happen here.
Same thing could happen. He did mulligan into a Bahamut though, so he's essentially down a card most of the game. Pretty okay hand for Fantasy. It's not terrible, it's not amazing. And V2 drew back into that Beauty and the Beast, so his mulligan didn't do too much for him. His hand is very, very slow.
Though Dirt Rune tends to be quite reactive early on, I feel that Fantasy is probably hoping to find a Magic Illusionist or something that can just help him mount some kind of pressure to punish the early inconsistency V2 may be feeling.
And another Beauty and the Beast drawn. This is gonna probably be a Fairy evolved into Carl. Feels bad, man.
Can't do that quite yet. I don't think he'd use his Elf Twins Assault though. But he did play the Fairy.
Right. This Fairy will end up evolving into Carl though, definitely. Because there's no way Carl kills this, right? You don't kill this Fairy. Maybe you do actually. That Halo Golem's been summoned. Nope, never mind. Just go face. All right.
I think there was definitely logic behind protecting it, but I think Fantasy's also at this point where he knows that his only way through is just slamming relentlessly into V2, dealing as much damage as he can. That Elf Twins Assault was just large enough to get him.
Especially on the play, you kind of have to play the strengths of your deck, and he does just have Halo Golem again with Witch's Cauldron, which will cycle, so that's pretty good. Never mind, he goes for the Red Hot Ritual instead, it seems.
Oh, he's perhaps looking for the refill with Oz here at a higher priority than the Halo Golem. I would have very much agreed with the Halo Golem as well.
It would seem awkward to go for Oz Bolt next turn, since that's one turn before your opponent could Beauty and the Beast you, and Bolt is an excellent answer to that, so...
Unbelievable.
At the very least, we know there's one answer to the first Beauty and the Beast, which will probably be V2's only option in taking care of the Halo Golem. But he finds a Levi as well.
That was an excellent top deck off of that Witch's Cauldron. He's going to put a Crimson Sorcery in his hand. He can't cast it this turn, but next turn Oz can turn his entire hand into castable spells. Well, not quite. He could have two of them come down, which will probably be Bolt and probably Crimson Sorcery, maybe Dance of Death. All three Beauty and the Beast, the hand of V2. That's very awkward.
At least he does have the three neutrals among his control lineup in his hand.
No shame.
Assuming he plays one card per turn, he can continue to play these, but is one of them. Perhaps this one is about to get turned into a Flame Rat. Cast hard as well.
A very adorable Flame Rat, I might add. And that's actually a lot of burn. It sets him to 8. And he can't play Isterfill this turn to heal. He can't play Isterfill for a while, actually, even. So.
This Unica is probably just going to end up being fodder in Levi, so it doesn't really count as effective healing, and recognizing that just goes for Beauty and the Beast number 2. Supersizes it, orders a bit extra.
No shame.
The only thing better than the first Beauty and the Beast is, in fact, the second Beauty and the Beast. And, I mean, realistically, there's no way for Fantasy to answer this unless Oz top decks one, which she will make castable. And she doesn't, so he has to probably play this ward. Yeah, he goes for a ward. Wow.
There were a lot of potential answers he could have drawn. At the very least, he's cycling through them a little bit. Goodbye, Flame Rat. Never mind.
No,
leaving
Dance
that up.
of Death to push damage. I like that a lot. I love that even, because that actually sets up Master Mage Levi, Young Levi to lethal on the swing back. So,
Oh my. Unfortunately, V2 has found it. This is
unfortunately, he found Ariat. So.
This is the only neutral forest list that I've ever seen pull this off, and it pulled it off kinda twice. One time on a Hector. But really,
Ariat just won. Come on. What?
that was the end. That was the final move we saw, is the one that we never actually get to see.
We did it. We saw the area combo. Very, very impressive on Vetu's side, and we were talking about how the odds are stacked against you, but really that rune deck, that dirt rune deck, just got bullied. I mean,
Yeah.
Fantasy just wanted to play it again and again and again and again, and I don't blame him because you're gonna need to find a win on it at some point. But